Hello and welcome to this week's episode of GIANT Health's Healthy Innovators Live TV. My name is Barry Shrier and I'm your host. We would like to thank our sponsors, Vodafone Business and Barclays Bank Eagle Labs and McKinsey. Thank you very much to our sponsors. We're grateful for your generous support and we love working with you guys. Once again, my name is Barry Shrier and I'm your host. Every week, we bring to you some of the most interesting and leading people that are doing amazing innovation in the world of healthcare and technology. This week's episode is looking at DTX, which is digital therapeutics, and how important contribution that is making to healthcare and well-being. GIANT Health's vision is to support entrepreneurs around the world and to encourage innovation in healthcare in order to improve the health and the well-being of everybody around the world. So we would like to say thank you to our many tens of thousands of viewers from around the world. We appreciate your support. And we would also like to invite you to message us and let us know what you'd like to see on these episodes and whether or not you yourself would like to feature on one of these episodes. So please don't hesitate to contact us. Our website address is www.giant.health. As I have mentioned in previous episodes, we're launching a new DTX Impact Venture, which will be announced on the 17th of May at European Health Tech Innovation Week. With the new DTX Venture, we're collecting innovators from around the world and supporting them in a business incubator program to address the challenges and the so-called innovation calls, which are set to us by global corporate pharma and medtech hardware businesses. So we look forward to developing that further with everybody in our community. So hello, Charlotte. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for asking.
It's a pleasure. Good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. And likewise, Megan, hello. How are you doing?
Delightful. It's good to be here today.
Excellent. So we're really glad to have you on board and looking forward to our conversation. So let's start, Charlotte. What's an example of a big challenge in healthcare? What are some big challenges in society and in healthcare? And what are examples of tech innovation to address those?
What a great question to start off with.
Absolutely.
So here's something controversial to start off with. I think, so my background is in medicine. I trained as a doctor. And one of the reasons why I left was that I felt that we weren't able to access all the great kind of evidence-based care through current services. And one of those reasons is that current services, I think, are fundamentally inequitable. So the way that we design them, they're very reliant on traditional forms of delivering therapy, so through clinicians. And as a result of that, you get waiting lists, there are access issues. And particularly in our world with big health, we focus on mental health. There's a huge amount of stigma, which already creates a big barrier to access. And so,
sure.
Plus, clinicians and the inequitable sort of distribution of these services means that you're not going to be able to reach everyone who needs care at the right time.
Right. So we have this inequity in healthcare, and are you suggesting that with tech and innovation we can address that?
Yes, I think so. And what I love about what we do is how we're able to deliver instant access CBT to anyone, anywhere, anytime, whenever they need it, however they need it, which is so completely different to how we currently deliver services, right? You usually have to call up your GP, you get referred, you have to wait 6 weeks, you see someone, yes, and it's just an introductory session, right? Like ultimately, we just want to get into the meat of therapy, and we want to be able to do it and work out how it would work within our day-to-day life,
Yes.
And that's where I think that meets the kind of inequity issue. It's that not everybody has the time nor the resources to be able to access care in the way that it's traditionally delivered. So
Sure.
What I love about digital is that it's able to break down a lot of those barriers and almost democratize healthcare for everybody.
Absolutely. Yes. No, that's very interesting. And well, Charlotte, thank you for that. And looking forward to hearing more about that in this conversation. And Megan, hello. So we're talking about some great big challenges in society and in healthcare. What's another example that you'd like to share with us, please?
I think building on what Charlotte just talked about, that notion where she's a trained physician, I'm a trained pharmacist.
Okay.
There is that notion that I think a lot of times healthcare patients, clinicians, or others just assume healthcare can only be delivered through medication or through in-person therapy. So that notion that we're starting to see of we could actually use digital to actually treat, manage, and prevent a disease is somewhat mind-blowing. And I think the notion of the idea of if you have two different medications, they both come in the same color, patients generally get the sense that, oh, they may do different things. It doesn't matter about the color for what the implication is from a clinical standpoint. And I think on digital, patients don't always know the difference. Is it a health and wellness app? Is it going to diagnose me? Is it going to monitor? Is it going to treat me? So I think there's those distinctions that are still developing for patients to understand, oh, there's an ecosystem here that's now available to me that I've never known about and that can really benefit me in the way that Charlotte was really speaking to.
No, that's a very good point. Thank you for sharing that. And we are in a little bit of a, what do you want to call it, perhaps a Wild West situation regarding what is, I think, quite broadly referred to as healthcare apps. And we've had a lot of conversation about that, where there's 400,000 healthcare apps out there, aren't there? And which ones are evidence-based? Which ones have been through some type of regulatory approval? Or which ones were invented by a couple students in the basement of their dormitory and they just launched yesterday and we don't actually know what levels of efficacy there are with them. So I guess that's a very interesting point. And what you just said about, well, look, for 100 years we've had drugs, haven't we? And we kind of know that if you take a drug in general, something might happen for better or worse. But with a digital therapeutic, this is new for people. Is that newness? What challenges does that new situation, the fact that not everybody is aware of this, you haven't been going to the pharmacist for the past 20 years picking up a digital therapeutic, have you? So that newness, Charlotte, and obviously Megan as well, what challenges does that in and of itself have?
Yeah, because digital therapeutics is the mode by which you can deliver a treatment, but those sorts of treatments might change depending on what product you choose. So, we have a focus on mental health, but there are digital therapeutics for gut health, for physiotherapy, etc. So really the challenge here is, how do you sell that methodology? It's like, we've imagined 100 years ago, we would just come up with the fact that you can deliver chemicals in, a pill format, and you're trying to sell this concept of the pill. You should take the pill, but what sort of pill? It could be any kind of pill. We can deliver all sorts of things by this pill, and it gets very confusing. So, one of the challenges that we have, and I think Megan can speak to this, given she's leading the DTA, is how do you mature the system and sell this very broad, I guess, problem that DTX can solve, whilst being true to all the different products that are out there, and trying to make it as clear as possible, which I appreciate not perhaps being clear about right now. So yeah, Megan, I'm keen to hear your thoughts about this.
Yeah, it's actually been part of our adventure over the last couple of years. We started DTA back in 2017, and the goal really was, let's create the foundation for this new industry, and the fact that it really is a new industry. So we created the definition of what a digital therapeutic is. We created quality principles that we believe all products should adhere to, and that clinicians and patients can use to say, is this actually doing what it says it should be doing? And use it to actually have a counterbalance there. We've been looking at best practices in terms of engaging patients and doing clinical trials and all these other things. So I think that distinction is important of, what does the product claim to do? That message alone is going to be helpful for patients to understand, oh, it's going to make me feel better by tomorrow. Great, because my mood will improve, I'll be happier, I'll lose weight. But will it actually start to make the claims, I'm going to, as a product, treat an aspect of your diabetes, impact your insomnia directly, actually impact what's going on with your chemo medications and your cancer medications, and really have that holistic notion around this is a full treatment. So I think it really is that expectation setting, but it's been fun and crazy and unique experience, really just developing the baseline foundation for what this new industry is and the expectations we believe these products should be living up to.
Very good point. You mentioned, obviously, Charlotte, that of course, originally there was the innovation of a pill, and whenever that was 100 years ago, and the challenges of how do you say it, educating the public about the pill, and so how does that fare now for pill manufacturers? If you've been in the business, if you're a global pharma company and they've been making pills for 100 years, and you have, what do you call it? You have distribution, you have education of clinicians, you have training of clinicians to prescribe pills. So I suppose we have quite a, what's the word for it? We have quite an established global infrastructure. It reminds me of the dawn of the automobile era 150 years ago, when there was no such thing as gas stations or petrol stations anywhere. And early automobile owners would have to walk down to the chemist to pick up some ethanol in a container they brought themselves to collect the fuel. So I suppose, things change, and eventually you get these very deep embedded ecosystems. So if you're a global pharma business now, if for 100 years you've been making pills and you get them through regulatory approval, and you educate clinicians about their use, and you get clinicians to prescribe them, how do we echo this with digital therapies?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, because I also feel like there are some system changes that need to happen, as well as industry pathways or frameworks. Right. So kind of hearkening back to World War II, it was at that time, a war period of extreme confusion, and they needed something, like clinicians needed something that set out, these are all the drugs that you can use for these sorts of things. And so that's how the British National Formulary got created.
Oh, okay.
So this idea of a pharmacopoeia that made it really easy for clinicians to just prescribe, like that, I think is going to be one of the most impactful things that could happen to our industry, because underlying all of that means there are clear standards for what good looks like. There is a format for, for clinicians to look at, and then for them to be able to prescribe from. It makes it really easy for, particularly from a doctor's standpoint. You've got 10 minutes, with a patient in your GP practice.
Yes.
You've got 400,000 apps to choose from. Yeah, how am I going to make that as easy as possible for you to choose the right product and right for that patient? So I also think, there are lots of lessons to learn from the pharmaceutical industry, of course. But I also feel like at this point in time, other than perhaps Germany, I would say the markets globally aren't yet in a place, mature enough place to be able to take this on. And to kind of really realize the potential of digital therapeutics. Megan, what do you think?
I think there's growth. I think it's a really good point. And I think both of your perspectives are really interesting on this one. The notion on the petrol stations is unique in terms of, I think that within this industry, we really need consistency. We need to have consistent ways to recognize. We have to have consistent ways to evaluate, consistent ways to ask for the right clinical data, to distribute, and all of these notions that come with it, while still preserving the creativity. So the notion that a petrol station, gas station, all of the pumps have the same type of handles. They all work with different cars. Even though the cars are different, there's still that infrastructure that enables that connection to happen. So whether it's interoperability or whatever other technical words that we've been working on for decades also in this industry, I think that consistency is really important, while enabling a lot of the creativity that companies are diving into in terms of how to treat, how to engage, how to actually optimize patient therapies overall. So yeah, it's a fun perspective to think about in terms of just relaying it back to either World War II or a very different era too, and how it's impacting us. And even looking at electric vehicles now, we're starting to see more stations pop up, and there's consistency in that, even though I'm sure that there's still preserving a lot of the uniqueness of the industry too.
Yes. Yes, I suppose from a commercial perspective, if you are a business, you do not want interoperability. You do not want to be able to buy a low-cost Ford starter motor to put in your expensive Mercedes car. So Mercedes doesn't want that interoperability for commercial, protection and purposes. Maybe it's different in healthcare. I don't know.
Well, they all get gas though. Or petrol, yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
My Americanness is coming out. But if you all go to a gas station, and if cars are running on gas or whatever the case is, they all need to at least have that connection. So the pump connects to the car, and you can still fuel it, you can still charge it, you can still do whatever the case is. Yes. So I think interoperability at that level is critical. Yes. Interoperability in terms of, we can switch the engines, and it doesn't matter what quality systems. Yeah, go ahead, Charlotte.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
matters.
So that
Oh,
was,
good point.
I guess that's the crucial point. The system currently doesn't have, the right petrol pumps to be able to enable all these different kind of DTX products to plug into the system. And by the
There's
system,
something to this, I think.
yeah, so I think things are starting to change. Like we've integrated with the likes of EMIS, for example, so it allows for seamless digital integration and
Yes.
electronic prescribing. And we're pretty much confident that EMIS is not going to stop moving into the world of digital therapeutics, and we're
Sure.
not going to stop moving into the world of EPRs. But the other thing about the system is that, particularly around reimbursement, which is another big challenge when we're talking about digital therapeutics, is that there is no framework or pathway for innovation to go from ideation right through to reimbursement. And that's not actually just for digital therapeutics, that's for digital health in general.
Okay.
And one of the things I was talking about with a colleague actually before was, if the system started to move towards a model whereby we paid on outcomes, not widgets. So we looked at, the improvements in certain clinical scores, or we looked at, what actually made the most difference for a patient at the end of the day. And then we allowed the system to, as Megan said, have that creativity to innovate within that space, but with with the sole recognition that you want to deliver this kind of clinical outcome. Like, that would be so wonderful, because it allows us to then, deliver what the system needs and ultimately what the patient needs, but within this kind of creative kind of sandbox that is health. Does that make sense?
No, it's a very good point. How do we fuel innovation whilst protecting patients and the reputation of healthcare providers? Often I'm invited to whatever, give speeches at international events, whatever, be the chairperson of conferences. And I like to joke about the fact that, I'm glad my GP doesn't poke me with some widget she bought from a startup yesterday. So you want innovation, but you need what?
So the notion of digital therapeutics actually being seen as legitimate therapy is growing, and increasingly so. The notion that these are being placed onto formularies, either at the national or the local level, the notion that they are being integrated into clinical guidelines for diabetes, for heart failure, for chemo or cancer, oncology notions. So there are a lot of ways that digital therapeutics are being seen as legitimate therapies that have been tested through clinical trials, through real world outcomes. What I love about digital therapeutics too, yes, they often, at least for our perspective, undergo their own clinical trial to validate this is doing what it says it's doing, it's safe, it's effective, it's going to work. But then the ongoing data that keeps being produced for them is really cool when you think about it in terms of, is the product functioning at the right level? Is it producing the right outcomes? Is it actually optimizing therapy? Are the patients engaging with it? How is it working? And unlike a medication, which you don't change after it goes to market, digital therapeutics, you can iterate, and not to the point where all of a sudden it looks nothing like when it first came out and a clinician will have no idea. Like, it may have started in mental health and then ended up somehow in a very different realm. But that notion where you can tweak and say, okay, for language, for culture, for usability, for all these notions to make sure that we're optimizing what the patient's receiving and then also optimizing the overall therapy. There's a lot to that a digital therapeutic introduces in terms of both the reliability from the perspective of regulatory agencies, clinicians, and so forth, but then also the usability in terms of end users across the board.
Yeah, so I would echo what Megan said. I would split this into two, and much like the pharmaceutical pathway, it really depends on where you end up in terms of engaging with that digital therapeutic. So you would have pre-market and post-market. So if, let's say, you're developing a digital therapeutic, we put all of our products through RCTs, and so you would have had to sign up for a trial, and so you would have had to consent to be poked and prodded by this digital product. When it gets into the market,
theoretically speaking, they don't poke and prod too much, to be honest.
It's just, there's a lot of focus groups, there's a lot of nice, like, fluffy things, and Amazon vouchers typically. So it's actually not too bad compared with a traditional pharma trial. But then you've got like the post-market stuff, right? So when you go to your GP and they say, look, we are trialing this thing, when they say trial, it's not, oh, we don't know if it works, we're going to see whether it works on you. It is more about, well, we know that it works in clinical trials, gold standard RCTs. What we're actually trying to look at is whether this works within our current system structure.
Right.
So I think it's how it's really sold to you. And perhaps they didn't give you enough Amazon vouchers.
It just dawned on me, maybe this is obvious, but you were talking about the difference, Megan, between a pill as a therapy and a digital, and how the pill formulation, of course, doesn't necessarily change over time, and how the digital therapy can be tweaked and improved. Not only that, I suppose you have considerably better evidence about ongoing usage.
Incredibly so.
Of course, there's a vast challenge for the pharma industry regarding adherence. And I don't know if the word adherence is the same in American as in English. But
in English, we speak English too.
But we always have huge pharma companies coming to us talking about the challenge they have regarding adherence. And of course, for single payer systems, the costs are astronomical. And you hear these statistics like whatever, sometimes 20, 30, 40% of patients do not take the pills that have been prescribed to them by their doctor according to the prescription. I am absolutely guilty of being prescribed years ago some antibiotics for 14 days. And after 7 days, I felt fine, so I just stopped taking them.
Microbial resistance.
Pharmacist in me hurts a bit to hear this, but I appreciate your honesty.
Yeah, so there we go. And here I am. And
forgiven.
Yeah, and so it's interesting because, of course, obviously with digital therapeutics, you have 100% perfect, what's the word for it? Knowledge about usage.
Yeah, exactly. It really opens up that black box of adherence, doesn't it? Because, I remember in med school, you'd be like, well, it's 33% that take it, 33% we have no idea, and 33% that don't. And it is completely made up because we don't have that data. And it's interesting because we're currently putting Sleepio through a nice medtech evaluation process. And if you're going to put a drug or any other treatment through this program, they wouldn't be able to meet the bar. But it's because we have such good quality data that they're able to track us on, what is the percentage uptake in year 2? Well, what is the adherence in year 3? How many people actually complete those, the sessions of Sleepio? Whereas, if you applied those the same criteria and bar for performance to, any other like psychological treatment, it'll be extremely hard to be able to get that data. So I think there also needs to be a recognition that digital therapeutics is upping the game in medicine.
I think that's really true. And caveating that, everything Shaw said is spot on. And I'm really excited about just what real world data can produce. Privacy and security, though, equally important. So making sure that patient data is protected, making sure that things are in aggregate form, that's de-identified in the appropriate ways. So all of that to say, I also, I know patients and different agencies regulatory-wise are concerned about, well, where's the data going? Where is it being stored? How is it being used? So our industry is really serious about this too, because we don't want this to, again, feel like a Wild West. Like the rest of the digital health ecosystem, there may be Wild West aspects to it. But on the digital therapeutic side, I've really been impressed by what the companies are doing to ensure that they're not only understand what patients are doing, but they're protecting them at the same time, educating them, engaging with them. So I've really been really glad just to see the level of rigor that this industry has taken on to itself to really ensure that it is a legitimate therapy being used in a legitimate way, not just, to your point, some kid in a basement be like, yeah, this will be cool. We'll just claim to treat cancer. And then off they go and find out that that is not safe, effective, or any way legal. So all that to say, I think Charlotte could probably speak to more of that if necessary, but it's been good to see that perspective of the level of treatment that they're looking at this through a variety of lenses.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, that point about data security and privacy and confidentiality is really, really important because it can be an enabler and it also can be a barrier to market access. So the enabler being, if there is really like great understanding of, how safe your product is, that you really take this seriously, you've got great governance processes, both from the data side as well as the clinical side, great. You're talking the same language as a healthcare system or a service. And so, you're halfway through the door. But, the challenge on the flip side is that because there is that lack of education in the system, a lot of people or buyers sometimes come to us and ask about, whether we're similar to another like mindfulness app, for example. And there are no questions about the clinical safety or, just the amount of rigor that we've put into our ISO accreditations or like just reams and reams of policies that we put in place just because, we want to make sure that it's as risk-free as possible for the clinician at the end of the day. Like those are the sort of questions that we love. Less so, yeah, like, do you have a fun kind of sunshine telling you to go through mindfulness? It's a bit of a double-edged sword really for me, because it's part of our job is to try and educate the market in that there are these standards and you should hold digital health products if you're intending to use them as treatment to these.
Yes, exactly. Anyhow, we'd love to learn a little bit more about what both of you guys are doing. So, Megan, if you can tell us a little bit more about the Digital Therapeutics Alliance and help us to understand, it might be the case that some of our listeners aren't really aware of what you guys are doing. And so we'd love to hear more, please.
I will not hold anyone accountable for that. So we are a trade association that's based in the United States. We were founded initially in Paris, though. And we have about 50 member companies from across the variety of the digital therapeutic companies themselves, the pharmaceutical companies, technology companies. We have some universities on board. So it's a really cool ecosystem to bring together. And we represent at least 15 countries. So our work really focuses primarily right now in North America, Europe, and Asia Pacific. All of that to say, some of the initiatives that we have underway is, one of them is we're looking at this notion of consistency. So if you had to, as a payer, as a clinician, start to identify what is a quality digital therapeutic product, how do you do that? So we're putting together this guide, and it's really the beginning step for us in terms of let's start the conversation and say, here's what we think digital therapeutics should do and how they should do it and how they can approach this process. And then later in the next month or so, we'll be opening up an engagement process to really bring decision makers into this process and just decide, how can this benefit you? How can we really use this to make sure that this framework is applicable to your situation? We're not looking for harmonization. I think consistency really is that notion. We know that the world will not use the same framework for evaluating and implementing a digital therapeutic product in practice. But what are those consistent notions, kind of like the petrol gas pump idea, that will still enable the innovation, the creativity, while bringing that consistency to really enable that scalability in the industry.
Excellent. What are some of the biggest challenges you guys are having as a fairly newly established trade body in a fairly new industry?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't really see us as new anymore, which I know we are theoretically. It's been so much, and my sense of time is completely warped with COVID now.
Of course.
Some of the challenges, I think we've really talked about them, is just that understanding of digital can be different and digital can be used in a meaningful way in a clinical environment. And how we go about doing that, really just building that understanding across regulatory agencies, policymakers, payers, decision makers, clinicians, patients, end users, caregivers. There's just a lot of education and engaging that we have to do yet. So it's been really fantastic, just really learning what the ecosystem looks like and how we can better engage in the midst of it.
Brilliant. Oh, superb. Tell us again the name of the organization and what's your website?
The Digital Therapeutics Alliance at dtxalliance.org.
dtxalliance.org. Perfect. And we'll obviously be providing links at the bottom of our video and on our YouTube channel. But thank you for sharing that. And likewise, of course, Charlotte, we'd love to hear more about what you guys are doing. So tell us, please.
Yeah, definitely. So hi, everyone. I'm Charlotte Lee. I'm the UK Director for Big Health, and we're a digital therapeutics company focused on mental health. So our mission is to help millions back to good mental health. And the way that we do that is by building or reimagining CBT as really engaging, destigmatized digital therapy and all these digital therapeutics, right? So sometimes I often say to people, like, imagine a world where you can access like psychological help wherever you are. Each session, that you go into is a demonstration of the quality and effort that's gone behind the scenes to provide CPT in the most kind of engaging way. And so you respond in kind. Therapy therefore becomes as enjoyable as watching a Netflix show. And so
Right.
no one needs to know. And I guess, like, the one thing about digital therapeutics is that you have to put your products through the toughest clinical trials and prove that they're safe and effective. And I think if there's one big takeaway from all of this, is that digital therapeutics equals to digital apps or software that's gone through clinical trials like RCTs.
Yes.
Because none of it matters or makes any difference if it doesn't work. And so in a way, you kind of have to be proud to go slow and not break things within the healthcare system.
Very good point.
So yeah, we currently work across the States and also the UK. My job is to scale within the UK and work with the best healthcare system in the world, the NHS, to bring that to good mental health. So yay, that's me.
No, that's very cool. You guys both mentioned this issue of stigma, and what is the difference if I, for example, have a mental health condition? And by the way, all my colleagues are always telling me I should have my head examined, so I'm not sure what they're on about. But what is the stigma issue, and why are DTX solutions different?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, if I was going to take a stab at it, stigma for me is the social and also internal barriers that prevent you from, one, recognizing that you have an issue, two, accessing help when you do realize that you have an issue. And so that could be cultural barriers. So where my community, the Chinese community, see kind of mental health is actually very disparaging. Like, there is quite a rude word to describe mental health
oh my gosh.
in my community. So even just through language, there is that stigma and that lack of access.
That's
and
interesting.
so there are challenges like that, and then there are obviously system challenges. So the fact that you can have barriers to access built in just through the fact that you only deliver care face-to-face, or you only deliver it 9 to 5 on Monday to Friday. So anyone who's working is not going to be able to find a time to access you. So you're just going to find the retired people coming to you. And then there's other issues as well. So, the fact that you can see stigma within digital health, where some products are only offered through certain platforms and require certain software to be able to talking about stigma and barriers to access within digital health. So I'm not here to paint the perfect rosy picture of digital therapeutics. It's just we're getting closer to equitable access day by day. But the issue here is that you've got communities where they don't have the resources or the phones or the software or even they're not on a monthly subscription for their phone. They're on a pay-as-you-go, and they've only bought so much data that they're not able to access your product. So to cut a long story short, there's kind of cultural, personal, as well as societal barriers that create a stigma around accessing mental health support.
Yes, no, that's extremely interesting. And likewise, from your views, Megan, this theme of stigma, does that come upon your radar? And
yeah, very much so.
What's the word for it? Are there advantages or opportunities here with digital solutions?
Yeah, I think so. Earlier last year, we put out a paper focusing more on rural health and underserved populations, really with the goal of talking about there are different times when a individual user who has a condition that they may not be able to take off work for visiting a therapist or going into an appointment or whatever the case is, because either people will understand, oh, that's what they do every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Or that is also the notion too of, if you're working multiple jobs, if you have education requirements, if you're caring for your family, you just may not be able to do that. So the notion where you could do it at 9 or 10 p.m. your time in your own home is valuable. Also, the other notion that is important to bring up here is language. So in many situations, you may have individuals who don't speak the primary language of the region that they're in, or whatever the case is, that there's a new language being introduced. So if therapy is only provided in English and the patient only speaks Spanish, that's a barrier there. So the notion though, of how do we actually use digital, obviously, I use the example too often, but different pills, they don't need to speak Spanish, or the notion like atorvastatin doesn't need to speak a different language. It can be used either way. But digital, if you're using it in a Spanish-speaking population, for example, the product should be provided in that patient's language. So it's another level that digital therapeutic companies need to face in terms of how can they reach different populations who have different languages, different backgrounds. What's that user testing process like? Hence the real-world data comes back into that too, to really optimize that experience for them. But you can start to provide therapies to patients who are in underserved settings, who don't have access to clinicians, who don't speak the language that's either prevalent or available to them. So there are a lot of ways that you can actually customize and optimize the therapy and deliver it to entire populations who have never had access to care before. And if this care has never been there, then maybe the stigma is there in terms of, well, you've never needed it before. We've all been fine. We're fine, right? And then someone may really need it and want it, and now they can finally access it theoretically. So how we actually create that framework and infrastructure to enable that is really critical.
Absolutely. But that, how do you say it? That frames the vastness of the opportunity, doesn't it?
Challenges and opportunities. They come really closely combined in this experience here.
Yeah, now how extraordinary is that? Hey, well, look, both of you, I'm so sorry to say we're kind of running out of time. And I wish that we weren't in the middle of a pandemic and that the three of us were together in a nice pub garden and I could buy you guys another round of drinks. And I wish we could continue this conversation for another hour or two. It's so interesting. And for me, I'm learning a lot and it's very informative. And I love to hear more about what both of you are doing, but we are kind of running out of time. So in the final few minutes, if you don't mind, if you can just share with us, do you have something you'd like to share with the audience? Are you launching a new product? Do you have a new paper you want to promote? Are you guys recruiting? Are you looking for new members or other partners in the international world of healthcare that you'd like to engage with? So, for example, Charlotte, do you have any asks of our community, or do you want to make any announcements about what's coming up with you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to highlight two things really. One, like I'd love to be able to speak to more people who are interested in the world of digital therapeutics, who want to learn more, and also people that I can learn from. So definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect. So that's a very personal, selfish ask. And then the other ask that I have is we are hiring at Big Health. So we are growing quite a bit. We have a really exciting strategy. I can't say much about it right now, but if you hit up www.bighealth.com/careers, then you'll be able to see all the different opportunities that we have and hopefully see you soon.
Well, that sounds very exciting. My wife always asks me when I'm going to get a real job. So I think I should go to your website and find out more about that. Thank you.
We seem to be doing quite well with this job, but that said, Host Health is a fantastic company. I'll give them full credit for that.
Oh, you're being very kind, and I'm grateful. I'm not sure how much I have deserved that, but thank you very much. I mean, likewise, Megan, as we're wrapping up, do you guys have like a vision for the future you'd like to share, or what's happening with you guys, and any announcements you'd like to make or share with the community?
Vision for the future, we definitely have one, and we're growing one. And I think part of the thing that we're looking for is just engaging with people who are really involved in this space. So whether you're a company, whether you're a regulatory agency, whether you're a decision maker, whatever the case is, it's been really great just really building that ecosystem and understanding what are the challenges and how do we work with people to really enable their systems to grow and introduce this level of consistency and importance within this new category of medicine, which it really is. So no immediate announcements otherwise. This value guide is going to be coming out eventually, and I'm thrilled about this, but we'll share more once it's ready to go.
Super. So elaborate a little bit, please, Megan. Who do you want to hear from? Are these pharma companies? Are these medical students? Are these what?
So the way that we orchestrate and operate is actually through company levels or organization levels. So it's there are different groups that are focused more on the individual level for individuals, like the students, like the individual practitioners, to become more engaged. For us, the way that we operate is really based upon that company level. So whether you're developing a digital therapeutic product, whether you're supporting one, whether you are looking to implement one, or provide it to an entire patient population, those are the types of entities that we engage with most often.
Okay. Okay, perfect. And remind us once again of your website address.
Indeed. Our website is www, if that matters anymore, dtxalliance.org.
dtxalliance.org. Perfect. Hey, well, look, I'm so sorry that we've run out of time, but this has been extremely interesting. And Charlotte, obviously, thank you. We love what you're doing, and you can consider us your biggest fans. And please don't hesitate to lean on us. And we'd love to support everything you guys are doing as much as possible. Likewise, obviously, Megan, what a pleasure to be in contact with you, and very proud to have you on this show. And we certainly believe very strongly in the future of DTX and an awful lot of big, exciting opportunities to address some very, very important big challenges in society and in healthcare around the world. So thank you very much for joining us. And really, really glad to have your time. And we certainly wish you every luck and keen to have you on this show maybe sometime in the future for a further catch up. So Charlotte, thank you very much. And likewise, Megan, thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
I'd also like to thank our sponsors, Vodafone Business and Barclays Bank Ecolabs. And of course, thank you to McKinsey. I'd also like to remind everybody that these episodes are produced by GIANT Health. We are a global community of nearly 200,000 people around the world, everybody whose business is healthcare, technology, and innovation. Coming up in May, from the 17th to the 21st of May, we have European Health Tech Innovation Week, which is 5 one-day conferences and trade shows, bringing together some of the leading innovators from all across Europe to showcase some of the very best innovation in healthcare and technology. The first event on Monday, the 17th of May, is taking place in Liverpool, in England, and that's a real-world face-to-face event. That's day one for business in England, following 5 months of pandemic and lockdown. So we invite anybody who can come to Liverpool on the 17th of May. Please message me and I can issue you a free ticket. So we'd love to see you. The rest of the events on the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, from the 18th to the 21st of May in Barcelona, Berlin, Paris, and Stockholm. Those are virtual events, so anybody can participate remotely from wherever you are in the world. And we hope to invite you and hope to see you to join us in those important conversations, bringing together everybody in the entire healthcare innovation ecosystem. So once again, thank you to GIANT Health for the assistance and the support producing these TV shows. My name is Barry Shrier. I've been your host. We certainly hope to hear from everybody again and look forward to all of you dialing in next week for another episode of Healthy Innovators Live TV. Thank you very much and goodbye. Good. How was that, Pariah? Everything okay?
Yep, everything went well, Barry.